Thank you, Senator, and thank you, Administrator Fox, for being here. And I have a lot of things to thank you for, so bear with me as I do a little bit of that. First of all, I don't think it can be overstated how important your trip to North Dakota was in 2021. And while we had a robust discussion about the WOTUS rule, and I will want to ask you some things about that here in a little bit, probably the most fun was nerding out a little bit, right, with the locals and the state water people. You're going through a water plant. It was wonderful. And I think most importantly, you listened to people and related to them. And so I just thank you for that trip. It meant a lot. Both the nerding out and the WOTUS stuff. But I also want to thank you since then. You've remained connected and you've always been available when I've had a question, and I've tried to answer the calls when you make them, and every now and then we just bump into each other. And I think it's important that people see that relationships matter, even where there's disagreement. And I appreciate that. But you and your team clarified some things for my constituents in pretty short order for a massive bureaucracy like yours, and I want to thank you for that as well. As you know, working with the SRF, the state revolving fund provisions of the infrastructure bill, our state agency that oversees SRF, along with a variety of other stakeholders, of course, in the water sector, raised concerns over the effective date of the Build America provisions. In particular, there were different effective dates for WIFIA and SRF. And of course, these obviously different programs, same agency, but different programs, but similar goals. And that kind of confusion oftentimes relates to chaos, and sometimes people just throw up their hands and give up. But after a couple of inquiries with state officials, your team reconciled the effective dates. Imagine that, a good, simple solution to the issue. And it's going to allow projects in North Dakota, and I presume other places, but in North Dakota to move forward. And I want to thank you and your team for clearing that up. It's good public service. I do want to ask, and I know this isn't about waters of the U.S. necessarily, but we don't get the opportunity often enough. And I know that Administrator Regan will be in front of us for the really tough questions. We'll spare you those. But I wanted to bring up a couple of issues, because at that same meeting in 2021, we heard from stakeholders. And since the agency unveiled the rule, I've heard from a lot of those stakeholders, constituents and others who are concerned that the new rule really embodies some of the same government overreach of the 2015 rule. I know there's some distinctions, and you're certainly going to clarify some of them, I'm sure. But I've also, anything that defers to the bureaucracy, we just get concerned about, because we've never really met a regulatory agency that didn't regulate when given the opportunity. But also concerning was the rules shift in applying the burden of proof. And this is a very specific issue, the burden of proof on the landowners for proving that their land is non-jurisdictional. So in these jurisdictional questions, can you just explain why it does that? I mean, the previous rule, the Trump rule, in its preamble states emphatically that the burden of proof is not on the landowner, but rather on the agency. And your rule seems to have flipped that. Can you explain that to me a little bit?
Yes, happy to. And I just want to thank you for your hospitality. It was a wonderful visit to North Dakota, and I appreciate the feedback around the team's work with your state SRF program. I have to say, Senator, North Dakota is doing a fabulous job with implementation of the bipartisan infrastructure law resources. They've already taken all of their CAP grants for year one. They're moving fast on their intended use plans, and so it's been a great partnership. There's going to be some great projects that are funded in North Dakota, and I can't wait to come back out for some of those groundbreakings as well. But, on Waters of the United States, thank you for the opportunity to clarify this question that you raised. And frankly, thank you for hosting me in North Dakota. We just received so much valuable information from from the wide array of stakeholders you brought together on waters of the United States. I'm really proud of where we landed on this rule. I think both in my confirmation hearing, Administrator Regan, when he had his confirmation hearing, we both talked about how our priority was to stop the ping pong with waters of the United States and to put forward a balanced rule that provided clear rules of the road to farmers, to ranchers, to landowners, to developers, and we have done that. Our rule is not the Obama Clean Water Rule. It is a much more narrow definition of waters of the United States than the Obama Rule. It is not the Trump Navigable Waters Rule either, which was, as you know, vacated by multiple courts and was off the books as of August 2021. One of the things that we really focused on in the development of our rule was practical implementation considerations. That is what I heard when I was in North Dakota. And on this landowner question, a couple of things that I would share. So one is that as part of our 2023 rule, we have a whole landowner's guide that makes it very easy for landowners to understand what is, if a permit might be needed or not. We also have worked closely with Army Corps where they can provide free jurisdictional determinations to any landowner that asks for them, and to do that quickly. So that's a key feature. I think one of the things that I'm most proud about as far as our 2020 rule is we also clarified what's out. So in the rule, we codified 8 exclusions that we heard in places like North Dakota are very important. For example, with prior converted cropland, this is something that so many farmers and ranchers have said it's confusing. And so we, in the rule, have made that a categorical exemption, very clear. And we partnered very closely with USDA on that because we thought it was also really important that our definitions between different agencies are aligned. And that is why USDA is so supportive of this particular rule. And then finally, again, this focus on implementation versus fighting about the definition, at the federal level is really a priority moving forward. So one thing that we did is as we as we issued our final rule, we also issued a series of implementation memorandums. Some of them are between EPA and Army, where we're doing trainings to make sure that there's a consistent understanding of this definition. We also have a coordination MOU with USDA, again, on how do we make sure some of these programs are aligned for the agricultural community. So, Senator, I believe that we delivered on what we said we would do. No more ping pong. Let's find the center. Let's give people clear rules of the road as it relates to waters of the United States, and then also to make sure we're protecting those vital water resources. So I hope you see that we have struck that balance. We certainly have tried.
No, I appreciate that, and I'm sure I'm the last Republican that will ask you about WOTUS today. Thank you.